Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey recently vetoed a gun reform bill that would have limited high-capacity magazines to a maximum of 10 rounds. And one of the things that's so brazen about this is he received a petition with 55,000 names on it urging him to sign the bill. And a majority of the people in his state agree with the bill and with that kind of gun reform. But he vetoed it anyway. So he didn't care. He's putting up his middle finger to everybody on this issue. He said, quote, "This is the very embodiment of reform in name only. It simply defies common sense to believe that imposing a new and entirely arbitrary number of bullets that can be lawfully loaded into a firearm will somehow eradicate or even reduce future instances of mass violence, nor is it sufficient to claim that a 10-round capacity might spare an 11th victim." Whoa, think about how stupid that is. He's saying, no, to say that 10 bullets would maybe save the 11th person, well, you're so wrong about that. Okay, Chris, I'm not sure you get this. Math is not debatable. I'm always flabbergasted by some of the people who bother to argue things that you can't argue against. You can't argue against that, man. Sometimes I get tweets from people who mean well. You know, a lot of people we probably agree on most issues, but sometimes they bring up this issue and they're like, yeah, but that wouldn't stop anything. You know, whether it's 30 bullets or 5 bullets, nothing's going to change, man. Okay, you have to understand, there are documented cases. For example, Jared Loughner, when he shot Gabby Giffords, the Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, in the face, okay, when he was reloading, he got tackled. That's what saved the day, is that he had to stop to reload, and some brave person stepped up to the plate and tackled his ass. And there are dozens of examples of that. So to say that, hey, maybe we should make it a little harder and limit 30 bullets to 5 or 10 or whatever the conversation is, right? To say that that's an illegitimate conversation, again, you're just simply denying math. But hey, some people want to deny math. That's fine. You just are exposing yourself to be a silly human being. But he's not done yet with his argument. Listen to him go on.
So are we saying then that the 10 children on the clip that they advocate for, that their lives are less valuable? If you take the logical conclusion of their argument, you go to 0. Because every life is valuable. And so why 10? Why not 6? Why not 2? Why not 1? Why not 0? Why not just ban guns completely? I mean, you know, so the logical conclusion of their argument is that you get to 0 eventually. So, you know, I understand their argument. I feel extraordinary sympathy for them and the other families and all the families across America who are the victims of gun violence, including the young man who was killed in West Orange a couple of weeks ago. Not with an automatic weapon, not with a clip. You know, wanton gun violence is bad no matter how it's conducted. And I understand their argument. I've heard their argument. I don't agree with their argument.
That's what we call a straw man, ladies and gentlemen. It's a logical fallacy where you make up your opponent's position and then you argue against that as opposed to arguing against what their actual position is. And that's also an example of a bullshit slippery slope. The idea that if we do any gun regulation, eventually we have to ban guns. Well, the reason why that's a bullshit example of a slippery slope is we can't ban all guns in America because we have this thing called the Second Amendment. And by the way, I don't know of anybody in the U.S. who's actually called for banning guns to begin with. You know, that's not a position that anybody is open to here. Okay? And nor should they be. I mean, look, maybe some people in some European nations would disagree with us on this, but I'm genuinely moderate on the issue of gun rights. I think, you know, unless you're a psychopath or a crazy person or you have bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or you're a suspected terrorist or you're a former felon or whatever, in most cases, if you're a law-abiding citizen, sure, you could have a gun. But should we have certain kinds of limits on, you know, what kind of guns and how many bullets they can hold, et cetera, et cetera? Absolutely. And here's the point, man. He's clearly doing this because he wants to be president, and he doesn't want to have to answer for doing any kind of gun reform when he's running in the primary, because the Republican primary voters are notorious rabid lunatics and idiots. And he'll just get hammered by the other candidates if he signs a bill like this. So he's doing this simply for his own political ambitions. And of course, this could end up backfiring. It's an unfortunate literal term, and people can die as a result of this. And as long as we're playing this game where we are going to pretend to paint a picture of the opponent's argument here, I could do the same thing, Chris. So, well, you're saying that any gun regulation leads to eventually banning guns. Well, that's funny. That means that you're saying we can't do any gun regulation at all. So in that case, why not, I don't know, have 100-round magazines? Because again, if you limit them, eventually you go to 0. We can't have that, right? So why not do 100-round magazines? Or why not allow people to get Gatling guns? Why not a fucking rocket launcher? Why not a chemical weapon or a biological weapon or an F-22 or a nuclear weapon? So as long as you're making up our position for us, Chris, well, maybe I could do the same for you. And say, well, you're in favor of no gun regulation at all. You want gun anarchy. So that means you have to allow people to get all those things and have the exact same weaponry that the government is allowed to have. Right? That's the argument people make anyway. Well, we need it as a last line of defense against tyranny. We need to be armed, so therefore we should be able to have everything that the government has. See, you know that's ridiculous, and you know we need some regulation. Then the question just becomes, where do we draw the line? But here's the main point to bring up about this that I was saving the best for last here. This is going to backfire in his face, man, and the reason why is he refused to meet with the parents of the kids from Sandy Hook. That is incredible political stupidity, you know. And his argument was, well, I already vetoed the bill. So, well, I mean, what am I going to do? Listen to them after and pretend like I care about what they're going to say? I can't. I would be lying to them if I did that. Oh. He went so far over the line on this that even fucking Joe Scarborough, who's done nothing but give him fellatio for years, even he came out and called him a chicken shit. Because he said, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? You're not going to meet with the people from Sandy Hook? Their children got fucking murdered by these weapons. You're not even going to hear their opinion out? Never mind. You don't have to accept it. You're not going to hear them out. You're not going to hear them out. So the optics of this are terrible. And he tried to do this to avoid criticism and to eventually, you know, in a Republican primary, be able to fend off the criticism. But it's actually going to lead to more criticism because it's a totally irrational idea and an overwhelming majority of the country is against him. And it just makes you look like a douchebag to say, I don't even want to talk to the parents of the victims, the children who died at Sandy Hook.